What's going on, everybody? Appreciate you for tuning in to another edition of the On the Ball podcast. And look, we got a lot to talk about tonight. It is draft week, literally just a couple of days away. And this is kind of the time of year that Dylan and I definitely love. So we're going to do a first round mock draft later on in the show. Should be a lot of fun. And obviously, I'll talk about the NBA playoffs because that's the other thing going on right now. And we've seen game ones in all these series. We've seen a couple of game twos. But before we even get into all that, also we'll look at some of the NBA awards. But before we do that, Dylan, how are you doing? What's going on with you?
I'm doing pretty good. I know we're doing, in the mid swing of, the first round of the playoffs. Like we're talking about the NFL draft tomorrow. One of my favorite, well, not tomorrow, Thursday, but one of my favorite times of the year. Love watching the NFL draft, seeing what could go down. Doing pretty good. It's been a really interesting playoff so far. Some games have been surprising. Some games have been a little bit closer than expected. And then some have gone, the results we expect. But so far, it's been a really good NBA playoff. I'm excited for, a lot of these, what would be game twos today. So really good. Really good. I'm excited.
What's going on, Jory? Shooting enough bricks to build a house out here. Yeah, and like I said, we'll touch on that because there's a few teams that seem like they are on the ropes, just barely hanging on right now. Grizzly to show a pulse. Hope they had a huge bowl of heart and guts. Yeah. Look, John Morant came out and said we're not gonna fold. We're not gonna lose the same way. So yeah, a lot of eyes will be on the Grizzlies to see how do they bounce back from such an embarrassing loss. Which, like I said, we will definitely get into all of that as well. But we do appreciate those of you in the comments. And, if you are tuned in, feel free to drop a comment for us. Love the interaction. Drop any questions and your thoughts on anything we talk about. So with that, let's go ahead and start with the playoffs because why not? So let me share this really quickly. Boom. All right. So we got the bracket just to kind of keep everybody up to date. We'll start in the West, kind of talk through what we've seen so far. Where let's start. Actually, we could start with the Grizzlies because that's the 1-8 matchup. We'll kind of just work our way down. Looking at what happened over the weekend, how badly they lost. I mean, do you give the Grizzlies any chance to make this a series? Do you think it's already over? Like, what is your perspective on the Grizzlies? Because we know going into the playoffs, they fired their coach, which was questionable, and now with the way that they came out in game one, are the Grizzlies really in trouble? And is this like a moment where the Grizzlies might realize that they have to change kind of the makeup of their roster?
I mean, obviously firing your head coach, I feel like that's probably something that was in their head. I mean, I think they're probably taking this playoff series. I'm not sure if they even really thought they were going to win it in their head. Maybe the players do, but more so like the front office and everything like that might have different thoughts. Yeah, I think this playoff was kind of just a chance to see, who's worth keeping, who's worth going, just mix around. This is kind of, the last call for everyone. Yeah, the Grizzlies should be worried. They've had the lowest odds of moving on in the first round, I think, than probably any other team in the playoffs. So, maybe we didn't expect a 51-point loss in the first game as something that would happen. That was a little bit shocking. But we expected this under to just kind of roll through them with some ease. Maybe the Grizzlies pick up a game, make it close, but nothing about this Grizzlies team, even most of the season, made you think like they were true playoff contenders. So, like I said, maybe losing 51 points wasn't, in our ideal, but again, it was the first game of the playoffs. Like you said, John Morant said, that won't happen again. Probably playoff jitters. Maybe, granted they're the number one seed, could have underestimated them a lot more than maybe expected. And they just blew through you. So going into the game two, today? Well, I guess they're playing right now. Just be very interesting to see, if they can make it a lot closer game, especially since it's still a home game for the Thunder as well, too.
Right. And look, normally with the playoffs, they go series doesn't start until the road team, till the home team loses, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
That's all well and good. But when you lose by 50 plus in game one, it's hard to even look at that as a reason of optimism for Memphis. So I think the main question will be, should we start to question whether or not Ja Morant can be your best player and you win a title?
I mean, fair. I think he can be. I mean, it just really depends on when he's locked in or not, and the team surrounded by him. I mean, we've kind of questioned, before Tatum won his ring, it was like, oh, is Tatum that guy? Can you win a ring around him? And it's like that with players until they actually do it. I mean, people weren't sure how they felt about Luka until he made the finals last year, and then it became more of a sure thing. Even when it came down to the Nuggets, Nikola Jokic, people are like, yeah, he's good, but is that a championship winning player? Until he did it. So only time will tell with specific things like this. I do think Ja Morant's one of the better players you have in the league, regardless of his character issues. He's super good. He's someone that can get you 25 plus on and even more on a night out, and that's what you get out of these superstars, players that you can really build around. Is someone who can do those things. Maybe he needs to, not maybe, he most definitely needs to be a better locker room character, and locker rooms create the whole dynamic for these seasons. If it's a down locker room, you could have the best talent in the world, but it just might not go on the court because people aren't the happiest. So really, it's just about creating a way better culture there in Memphis, building something around that makes it feel like you are a championship level team, and maybe I just doesn't feel like Memphis even felt like they were this year themselves either.
Okay. And Mo has a good idea, which we'll do that here shortly. Most overused word in sports, superstar. I agree. I feel like for some reason these analysts don't like, I guess, clarifying whether or not you're a superstar, star, role player. They just automatically feel like, oh, you create highlights, you're a superstar. Oh, you are popular, you're a superstar. Being popular is all well and good, but the game has to kind of support superstar. And if you're a superstar, we shouldn't be questioning your leadership ability, your ability to kind of bring a locker room together when things don't go your way. We shouldn't be questioning whether you're more worried about celebrations and actually winning. Like, there's a lot that's going on in Memphis that I think we might look back on this season and realize changes were needed, and I wouldn't be surprised if changes don't happen in this offseason. They need a veteran in front office that stays out the way. Very true. But Mo wants to do Ja Morant or. All right. I guess we'll see where you are with Ja Morant. Let's go. Let's not think about guys in the playoffs. So Ja Morant or, and also you in the chat can do the same. Give us your answer. Ja Morant, Donovan Mitchell.
I'd have to take Donovan Mitchell. You look at Donovan Mitchell and what he's been able to do with a couple of different teams, especially with Cleveland being a first seed this year, really kind of settles it in. He's a guy you can trust on. And again, it breaks down to locker room character things, different things like that. Donovan Mitchell, I even think now is a bigger star than John. I wouldn't say bigger star, but a better player than Ja Morant. Does a little bit more. Maybe you could argue about who's more explosive, but right now, if you're taking a player that you can trust and go into a playoff series with, you have to take Donovan Mitchell because he's proved he can, play very well in the playoffs. As where Ja Morant has played well, but really doesn't have too much to go for it with.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I would agree with that. I would take Donovan Mitchell. How about Ja Morant, Tyrese Halliburton?
That's an interesting one. It's a tough one. I think for the now you go Tyrese Halliburton. Maybe. I think you have a way better offensive threat overall. Someone who you could probably trust to have a way bigger night with someone like Ja Morant. But Tyrese Halliburton is very consistent, and that's what that Pacers team kind of has been this year. They don't really excel in anything. They kind of just do everything pretty good, and that's just how their team's been this year. So I'd probably take Halliburton just for the fact, again, he has a little bit more to show for it. Recently coming off an Eastern Conference appearance, Eastern Conference championship appearance, which is something the Grizzlies haven't even have the Grizzlies made the Western before with Ja? I don't think so.
No.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I mean, you have You have a guard like Tyrese Halliburton, who's kind of shown, kind of done it, and he keeps making these smooth progressions. He's not someone who's really a big name, even though it kind of seems like people have their mixed feelings about Tyrese Halliburton, maybe on the
Mhm.
player or fan side. But overall, he's a good player. He's someone you can trust on. He's someone who can come in, he's going to do his work. I wouldn't say outside of what type of performance you're going to get, because that's a night in night out basis. But he's someone who's going to come in, who's work, not nothing else extra on with it. So I'd probably take Halliburton.
So Mo was saying, if you take Halliburton, are we just saying that Morant isn't a superstar because Halliburton isn't one either?
I don't think John Moran is a superstar. I think you could
Right.
say John Moran is a star. I think maybe you could say before John Moran had his issues, he was a Bird superstar if he wasn't already. But since he's had all of his issues, since he's been out for extensive period, he's not a superstar anymore.
Okay, that's fair. And as Jory said, I do think this one is a tough one, because I feel like if you look at on the court what they can do, I feel like Halliburton would probably contribute a little bit more to winning, because I like Halliburton as a playmaker a little bit more. I think Halliburton with his 3-point shot obviously is something that's better than Morant, although Morant has gotten better with it. I will give him that credit. So if I had to win a playoff game tomorrow, I mean, Morant is explosive. I get that.
I was even thinking, I was like, well, the big difference between them, I was like, the big difference between them, it's like we've seen John Morant really just take over games, just take them over. As we're like, Halliburton has, but he doesn't really have that, to that extent, as someone like a Steph Curry, or even like, I know I'm a Hawks fan, but like Trae Young, some of these guards who can like just go in and, go score 8-10 points, even if they're having a bad night, just randomly out of nowhere. And that's not something you really can see out of Halliburton. He can find the right pass, he can make the right shot, different things like that. But he's not someone like, if you need a run, can you trust on Tyrese Halliburton to be that sole guard to make a run? I'm not sure, but you definitely can on John Morant.
True. Okay, that's a good point. Hallie's nice, but he's not a dog. Yeah.
See,
I think Halliburton is a guy who.
That's perfect. Sorry, but that's like in a perfect saying. He's really good, but he doesn't have that. He doesn't have that dog in him.
Mm-hmm. And like when you look at guys who could benefit from a good playoff run, like Halliburton is one of those, because Halliburton's up there in assists every year. He can score points and stuff, but like Mo said, when people look at Halliburton, they're always like, there's something missing. But let's go on to the next player. How about John Morant or Cade Cunningham?
Cade Cunningham. I mean, maybe that's just because we've seen how dynamic Cade is. Honestly, no offense to Tyrese Halliburton, I think Cade Cunningham is a better Tyrese Halliburton. He has that takeover ability. I think you look at Cade Cunningham, and obviously they have different things within their game, but I think you look at someone like Cade Cunningham and you go like, dang, Tyrese Halliburton could, be someone like that. Of course, have his own different things with it, but we've seen Cade Cunningham be that lead guy and someone you can trust to win games for you.
Yeah, and that's kind of Detroit. I agree with you. I'm going Cade, and it's not even close.
Yeah, no. Especially since Cade's younger too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and Jory can attest to this. We did Passion and Precision this past Friday. I did top 10 players, and I actually put Cade at 10 for guys in the playoffs, because I think if you haven't been paying attention to the Pistons, which I know if you're Shaq and you don't watch them, Cade Cunningham has had somewhat of a similar season to last year numbers-wise, but impact, he's been so much better this year than last year, and that's why I really do think like they have a good shot against the Knicks, and I think it's going to be because of him and kind of the maturity that we've seen in his game over the course of just the few years he's been in the league. So, yeah, give me Cade Cunningham.
By far, Cade Cunningham is the most mature player on that team. The Pistons kind of even this season, last couple of seasons, they got a pretty wild, rambunctious group of people that are a little unpredictable of what they might do. Cade Cunningham just seems like a pure leader on that team. Mm-hmm. He's not making any noise. He's not doing anything like that. He's really just going in and playing ball and doing really good at it. So,
yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go. John Morant or I mean, this one I feel like I might know where this is going, but let's say John Morant, Jamal Murray.
I'm gonna say John Moran on that one. Murray's good, but he's definitely had his own struggles in a sense. I think maybe if we were talking during that Nuggets run, you can make a pretty good argument. When the Nuggets won the championship after that, because Jamal Murray had some pretty great stretches during that. Even a couple of years prior, Jamal Murray was a player like really good in the playoffs, but he just doesn't kind of have that same feel to him as much as I would say anymore. I'd have to go Morant. Morant's that kind of superstar that you can trust on a little bit more with that sense in comparison to some of these other guys where, they might average roughly around the same points, but if they don't, they're making up in a different stat category. Just in this case, I'd have to take Morant.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would agree with that. Murray has definitely fallen off in the past few years. Who's another guy could use a good playoff run. All right, so let's go. John Morant. I mean, you brought him up a little earlier. Trae Young.
Maybe I might be a little biased, but I'm going Trae Young. I mean, just because maybe his passing aspect, these guys do roughly well when it comes to scoring output. Both of them have their own character concerns. You could argue about who would be a better leader, tooth and nail. That Magic playing game kind of really left it. I love Trae Young. I'm a big Oklahoma fan, so obviously he's my favorite player in the league. That Magic game, just kind of how he acted, gave me a sour taste on his leadership ability, especially with that kind of being a way younger Hawks team, as where maybe last year with that DeJounte Murray team, you kind of had a 1A. Maybe you had a 1 and a 2 when it comes to like that leadership with young Murray, different things like that. But this is a way younger team. Not a lot of these old veteran guys that you used to have anymore on it. So I'm going to say Trae Young just because he's been a lot more consistent. He's kind of someone that you kind of look at as an all-star snub every year, someone who could potentially make it. So he does really well in his own sense, one of the better passers in the league, if not right now the best passer in the league. So I'd have to give it to Trae Young.
I mean, I might be the other side of the spectrum from you. I think in this one I would go Morant, and only for this reason. I think with Trae Young, because of his size, bigger defenders really give him a lot of trouble. And I think when you play in the half court, I feel like with Trae Young's handles and stuff, he's not really able to get to his spots as easily as probably a Morant would. And I agree with you. Leadership-wise, they're probably on the same level. I think Young is obviously a better shooter, but I've also questioned Trae Young's shot selection sometimes, especially when he starts getting into like the habit of taking those really deep threes and everything like that. I just don't know. So I think for me, I would go Morant. I mean, I don't think it's like some crazy gap between the two of them because they're kind of similar in a lot of ways, but I would just take Morant because of his size, I guess.
That's fair. One thing I'll probably attribute, the Hawks' issues to, and this whole plan was very prevalent. They don't have a single number 2 guy. They have a lot of guys, like a Dyson Daniels, a bunch of these different guys that will kind of pick up all these little different ends which you want, but they don't have a single number 2 scoring option. They don't. There's not a single guy on that court they can trust to help when Trae Young's not there. Kind of I know the Nuggets have a Jamal Murray or a Michael Porter Jr., but that's kind of how the Nugget situation is. When Jokic is off the court, who can you really trust? Put in that league, and that's what the Hawks were. I mean, if you watch that both those play-in games, when Trae Young was off the court, they were struggling even way more, and just trying to make something move. Especially that Magic's game, we brought it close. Trae Young went out, and they're down 12, and Trae Young had to rush back in, try to get it closer again. So definitely the Hawks' big issue is they don't have a number 2 scorer. I feel like that was something that would help Trae Young in those instances when someone plays like, that Heat game, throwing Andrew Wiggins on them. If they had another 2 option, maybe a bigger guard or a forward, Andrew Wiggins wouldn't be covering Trae Young. He'd be covering that option. So a lot of teams are able to match up against the Hawks well because literally their game plan is put our best defender on Trae Young. And if any of these guys have, a 20-point night, that's okay because Trae Young's probably going to have a 15-point night. 17-point night. He might have 14, 15 assists to go with it, but he's not your lead scorer.
Yeah. Sure. But I mean, I feel like the Hawks have tried number two options. It just none
I
of them
feel
have
like
worked with Trae Young for various reasons. Like I love the DeJounte Murray move. That was a disaster because Murray creates off the dribble. He's not the greatest shooter. So if he has the ball in his hands, you now need Trae Young operating off the ball. That's not necessarily Trae Young's strongest suit. So that didn't work. Uh, I do agree, like in terms of like a legit number two, it has been a bit tricky because they basically tried to go with Trae Young and then like a bunch of role players like your Bogdanoviches, your uh, even DeAndre Hunter. Like he seems to be working really well in Cleveland, but he didn't work as well in Atlanta. So it's just like I just don't know. I think it's Young could definitely elevate his game because especially with the Hawks wanting him to be Steph Curry, which is what he was touted as coming out of Oklahoma, even though I thought that was unfair to Trae Young to put that on him. Trae Young, I mean Steph Curry can dominate off the ball. Trae Young is disinterested. And I feel like that's been a problem with the Hawks as well because they become predictable. Every defense knows the ball's going to sit in Trae Young's hand. They're going to try to run pick and roll. And if you have a big or a wing, depending on who they're running pick and roll with, that can move their feet, you can neutralize Trae Young. Because once again, he's not the biggest guy either. So he's not going to really get his shot off over you. And like I said, I feel like his ability to get into the lane, he doesn't do it consistently enough, especially on decent defenders, if not good defenders. Because we see like the Celtics used to lock him up. The Heat would always do it because they had they had bigs who could move and play out in space. And Trae Young would just be lost on the court. So, yeah.
one thing I'll give the Hawks and mainly Trae Young credit for, he's getting his regardless. He might go for 0 for 5 for the first time, but he's gonna get his. Teams know what they're gonna do. Teams know what he's gonna do, but he's still hurting you for 5 alley oops a game, pick and roll alley oops at that as well too. Trae Young is one of the best pick and roll players in the league. He's so quick off the first step. We mentioned that even watching that. I think it was that Heat playing game. He's so fast off his first step, really quick, one of the quickest players in the league. And it's because, he has a little bit of unpredictability to him. It's just he doesn't have those players around him to help make it shine. Because he's someone who can just drive in on you, just take that quick first step, score a layup, toss a pick and roll, alley-oop, something along those lines. He has one of the best floaters in the league, which makes it really hard when he drives in on you. Also, he's one of the better shooters in the league. So there's some unpredictability to him. It's just after a while in, a 4-quarter game, you can kind of pick up on what he might do a little bit here and there. And if you have no one else you can trust to, then that's just kind of what it is. Trae Young's going to have to do it in his, or, some of these other players are going to have to just make some forced shots, some chuck-ups, kind of take it in their own hands. And they just don't have the players for that to work.
Okay.
You did see some glimpses, though. You really like what you got from Dyson Daniels. I think Zachary Richard was a really good rookie this year.
Mm-hmm.
Probably won't win Rookie of the Year, but definitely second place. You had some bright spots with this team. I think, in comparison from this year to last year, especially with that DeJounte Murray trade, I think you're way more happy with the Hawks this year than what you had last year, especially since you're a lot younger. Trae Young, you kind of got the same results with just Trae Young being that lead guy. So it's like, okay, let's find someone we can actually work with Trae Young. Because looking at the DeJounte Murray trade past it now, since he's gone and things like that, it just didn't make sense, make Trae Young's second option another guard. It didn't really make sense in that way as, Trae Young's going to hold the ball if there's a 24-second shot clock. Trae Young's probably holding the ball for, 13 seconds of that. Mm-hmm. So making it another guard, he might need some time to set up what a move he's going to make or something like that's not good. As you just need one of those dominant bigs or a dominant forward who can just kind of get it when they need it.
Okay, that's fair. Okay. I guess looking back on the series really quickly. So we talked about Thunder Grizzlies. All right, Nuggets Clippers. The Clippers tied the series up last night. It's now 1-1. And I feel like this series is going to come down to like Jokic versus Kawhi and who will lead their team to this series win? Because I feel like when you look at the other parts and the other parts of these two teams, like I feel like it's going to go 7 no matter what. Because as good as I guess like the Clippers are defensively, Jokic is just crafty enough to keep Denver in these games, and it's just a matter of between MPJ, between Jamal Murray, can one of them kind of go along with him and give him production while the third one isn't just out there just taking up space. While with the Clippers, it's Kawhi has looked locked in and has looked like one of the better players going into the playoffs. And you got Harden, who's performed really well, although Powell hasn't really played well yet. So that game's coming at some point in this series where Powell's going to light it up a little bit. So where do you see this series going? Who do you think has the advantage with the series now shifting to LA?
I was very big on the Clippers. Last week's show, I was talking about how I personally think the Clippers are, out of any team that could kind of shock and make one of these conference finals, maybe, even a championship. I really like the Clippers odds. Kawhi Leonard, man, he's such a good playoff player. And it's starting that last game, you're just really kind of, brought you back, gave you a flashback of, how good of a player he can be when healthy, when, just in a good mindset, especially being in the playoffs, you want to compete at your peak. Kawhi Leonard's such a good player, and that really showed. That first game went to overtime as well too, so Denver really struggled in their first 2 games at home, which aren't good signs. 2 games going in LA for the Clippers. There's going to be a lot of energy, especially recent series they haven't been fully healthy. This is probably the most healthy they've been in a playoff series, and at least with this Clippers regime, it feels like. So there's going to be a lot of hype in there, especially coming off of a great Kawhi Leonard performance last game. I do agree it will probably go 7. It might go 6 though if the Clippers can take these 2 games at home.
Yeah, I mean I'm kind of assuming that the same way the Clippers took 1 in Denver, Denver may get 1 in LA, and they also got to think about it. It's going to be the Clippers' first playoff run in the new building.
Sure. I think that will be more emotion to it as well too. There's kind of maybe, and I know some players don't think of things like that, but some do as well. Like people think about their fan base. Players think about different things like that. So I think that's going to mean a lot to some of these players in there, and they're going to want to go out and perform.
Yeah, hey, Ballmer's going to be on 10, and good for that guy. Like he seems like he's a big fan of his team, so I guess maybe they can give him some success. I guess moving to the next series, looking at the other team out in LA, we got the Lakers and the Timberwolves, who do have game 2 tonight, and I feel like it's being asked everywhere all day. Is it must win for the Lakers?
I mean, when you always lose your first game at home in the playoffs, the second game is I would always say a must win. Maybe not must win as if you don't win this, your chances of moving on are slim, but must win to, get some proper momentum back on your side. You don't want to go, away from your home, travel into Minnesota being down 2 games kind of at your lowest point. You want to go in this game, maybe even if it's not like a dominant, crushing win, to kind of give you your confidence back. You just want to go out there and win. Or even play really, really good, just a lot better. Almost it was a 22-point loss last game. That's not good. You showed some flaws. Kind of take this as okay, yeah, we didn't game plan properly. We didn't do this. Let's go out there, with a proper game plan, things like that. They split the regular season matchup 2-2. So it's very close, kind of just like the Nuggets and the Clippers did, 2-2. And we're seeing a lot closer basketball and stuff with that because of it. We mentioned last game, I think the Timberwolves were the worst, probably one of the worst first-round matchups for the Lakers, just given, the Timberwolves' size and different things like that. So Lakers struggle defensively as well. The Timberwolves are really kind of just hard to cover defensively, just because of how explosive Anthony Edwards could be and their size given for the Lakers. So, of course, you would always say must win because you don't want to be down 2 games in the series, especially losing your first 2 home games. But if they were to lose this one, you have LeBron James on your team. You have Luka Doncic on your team. Those are 2 of the top 10, if not 5 players in the league. So I can't count them out until whatever. I mean, everyone counted LeBron out when they were down 3-1 in the finals, and then look what happened. So things can turn on a dime. But yeah, I would say it's must win. Try to get yourself right on the back track. I think it's a lot harder, to convince your team you can go into Minnesota and win, and get the proper stuff going on if you're down 0-2 rather than if it's 1-1.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, if the Lakers lose tonight, now you're traveling to Minnesota down 2-0. Ant will be amped up, and especially in front of his home crowd, to really put on a show. Also with him be on the road, he needs to kind of cut out the antics with the crowd, because he did get fined for stuff he was doing with the crowd in game 1. Unless he wants to just keep giving money back to the league, like he should kind of wait on that until like they clinch the series. Because if they lose this series and he did that in game 1, it's gonna look kind of stupid. But I think the worry, and Mo, Jory, you guys Lakers fans, let me know if Ant gets in a groove. He's one of those guys around the league that can put up 2-3 game stretch where he's dropping 35, 40 a night. And for that Minnesota team, when he's going, he definitely elevates the other guys on that team. I'm looking at game 1. I wouldn't bet on it happening in game 2, but for McDaniels to go like 11 for 13 from the field, like that's definitely a product of Ant getting those guys comfortable, Minnesota feeling comfortable against LA in game 1. So I would expect the Lakers to have a better showing tonight for sure. Like you have LeBron, you have Luka, 2 guys who have been through playoff series before. You would think they would elevate their game, and with the Lakers, it's going to be kind of the same thing you could say for most teams in the playoffs. The other guys, Rui, Reeves, like what do they get from those two? And so yeah, I mean, obviously, I do think it's a must win. But if the Lakers do get it and tie it up 1-1, then you almost feel like the series is starting over, and the Lakers would obviously feel like they could win a game in Minnesota. Like they're not looking at Minnesota as some, den of horrors to go into and win. Like they could very easily be back in LA 2-2 for game 5, and then you just have to win 2 out of 3. So, I mean that is going to be a game I will be watching for sure.
You saw how hyped that Minnesota crowd got when they won that play-in a while ago. Watch out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you'd have thought they won it all, but exactly, you feel like that's going to be the same type of atmosphere the Lakers will be walking into in game 3.
I just think Anthony Edwards just plays his best, like the not better competition, like maybe team overall wise, but just like player wise. I think like you tell Anthony Edwards he's playing LeBron James in a series, he's just going to want to play at his peak. And I even think that next series, you tell Anthony Edwards, hey, you're playing Steph Curry in the Warriors next series, he's gonna play out of his mind. I think I kind of wasn't 100% sure how I felt about Minnesota going after the first round, but man, if they can kind of put a solid stamp on this like Lakers series, they're gonna be tough to beat.
Yeah. Okay. Last series in the West, Rockets Warriors. The Warriors take game 1 up in Houston. I mean, is this just simply maybe the worst matchup for a young Rockets team, a veteran-laden Warriors team that, look, late game situations, they kind of know who they are. I think with the Rockets, they're searching a lot of times for who needs to be the number 1 guy on a given night and how do the rest of the guys play off of them. So is it just the worst matchup for Houston?
Oh, by far. I think, I look at the Rockets this year of like the Thunder last year, like really good team, great in the regular season, but, not battle tested yet. And that's what this Rockets team is. You kind of put them against a horrible matchup. Maybe if you put them against, even though we were just talking about Minnesota, you put them up against a team, maybe like Minnesota, and it might have been different. Or the Grizzlies, obviously, of course, you probably would have way different results. But, who are probably arguably 2 of the best playoff players in our league currently. Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and so that's just not good mixture. It's you're not playing the Warriors team that you're playing in the regular season, which the Warriors won the regular season matchup 3-2 against them. Um, you're playing a whole different animal. You're playing Steph Curry, playoff Steph Curry. You're playing playoff Jimmy Butler. You're playing playoff Steve Kerr. Where if there's any team in this current playoffs, maybe you could say outside of the Celtics, just because they've been doing it recently and they won the chip recently. The Warriors are like the most decorated team when it comes to championships, and even with players on roster.
Rockets don't have enough shooting, and they don't have a closer. This should be a sweep. Yeah, I mean it's kind of hard to look at this Rockets team and go, they could beat the Warriors if. And it seems like the only if you could really come up with is like if Curry has an off shooting night, they get sloppy with the ball, and Houston can get out and just run, and get dunks and all that. Like you force the Rockets into the half court game. At times, it is a struggle for them to even come up with sets to get guys open in spaces that they can operate in. I almost feel like the one guy I feel confident in with them is like Sengun. But they're supposed to be, Jalen Green and all these guys who are the more known players on the court who seem like they keep trying to get theirs. But it's just like with the Warriors, I just don't see it. For me, I usually never predict sweeps because I always feel like, the lesser team could get one just for fun. But looking at these two teams, I'm finding it hard pressed to see how the Rockets even get a game in this series.
Especially
so
if
I kind of agree with you, Mo. It probably should be a sweep. It doesn't, and also that doesn't take away from the Rockets in any way. Like they earned the 2 seed, they're making progress, and this might just be something that makes them better next season. Like they're not going to be. I wouldn't look broad number 2. I would just say Warriors at a 7, as a 7 seed, might not have been fair to such a young Rockets team.
I think this also attributes to how really good the West is, because if you look at the difference between like record wise from 2 to 7, it's 4 games, it's 4 wins. Mm-hmm. 4 games, where maybe a shot or two could have won it and you would have won it, and that would have changed the whole landscape of this playoffs. So it's like the Warriors weren't too far off from being, the 2nd seed themselves in this playoffs, which just shows you how dominant the West is. So it's just really hard to tell, maybe if this Rocket team, granted, did get that 2nd seed, if they were really up to this par yet, or anything along those lines, or just, man, this is just a strong West. This is just a really, really strong West. As you know, when you look at the playing games on the East side, it was like you had teams below 500 playing. As where you look at the West side, you had teams who would, normally be 4 or 5 seeds, maybe even 3 to 2 seeds, having to play in a play-in because it's just everyone's so good.
Yeah. That's true. As long as Green is your number 1 option, you're not winning in the playoffs. Definitely seems that way. And look, if you're Houston, there is a guy out there down in Phoenix that could be available. How desperate do you get to try and go get that guy? And look, if you're Phoenix, Houston is a team that you beg to come calling. Because if you can get some picks out of them, a young player or two, like, why wouldn't you do it? So I do think Houston will be a team to watch to see, especially if they do get swept by Golden State. I think the pressure on them to go get Kevin Durant will just intensify. And whether or not they pull the trigger, we'll have to see in the offseason. Okay, let's go to the East. I keep seeing that Thunder Grizzlies score, and like the Thunder are already up by 20, so that looks like it's headed down the same road as this weekend. But Cavaliers and the Heat, the Cavs had the 1-0 lead, and yeah, that point right there, Mo. Yeah, Houston has the Suns pick, so maybe the Suns can get some of them back by dealing Durant off. But yeah, the Cavaliers and the Heat, I feel like this is kind of similar to Thunder Grizzlies. Like, do the Heat have a shot at winning a game against this Cleveland team?
Man, I'm just gonna say no. Out of all the series that we had, this for the first round, this was the series that I thought was the most closest to being like a definite sweep. Man, I was looking like that Thunder Grizzlies one will probably be one as well too. But these one seeds, I just thought were going to dominate their matchups. I don't know, man. That first game didn't really give you anything to hope for maybe the Heat make a run. Also, this Heat team does not have a Jimmy Butler. If they to make this magical 8 seed run for them again or anything like that. Yeah, I'll take Cleveland.
Okay. And Mo, to go to your comment, I guess Josh's pregame speech didn't take. Yeah, also doesn't help when John Morant's 0 for 6 from the field with 1 point and 2 rebounds. So, I mean, he's supposed to be leading that team into this game. He's not playing well. Hard to expect the other guys to pick him up. So, yeah, jeez. Yeah. Look, they look like they're about to lose in 3. Like, just don't even play the 4th game at this point. A game that's currently going on, the Bucks and the Pacers. And look, this one, it looked like the Pacers are kind of set to get out to a big lead over a Bucks team with Damian Lillard coming back tonight, which is good to hear. Getting off the blood thinners and the deep vein thrombosis. I believe he's cleared of that. So it's good to see him back. But they are still losing at the half 68-60, which means they're just another half away from being down 2-0. So when you look at this one, what's been the Bucks' biggest problem going up against this Pacers team?
I mean, that's kind of always just say the big thing, health, man. It sucks not only having one of your good guys. You look at this Bucks team. Even in comparison to last year, like the molds of these teams are different. The Bucks team last year still had a Chris Middleton. If Damian Lillard couldn't perform of what he was up to. So, and man, Kyle Kuzma sucked that first playoff game. Mm-hmm. That's just not. You cannot play 21 minutes in a playoff game and not score a single stat on your stat sheet that isn't missed shots. That just can't happen. Especially if you trade a Chris Middleton caliber type player away for him. I mean, the thing that's hurting him most is not what's outside of Giannis doing everything for him. That's it. Giannis is doing everything for him. That's what's hurting them the most. They don't really have anyone else they can rely on to do too much for him. Getting Damian Lillard back is big, just because that just creates. Having his presence on the court just changes what you have to do defensively, just very slightly, just even enough to let Giannis work a little bit more. Let some of these other guys work a little bit more. Again, it's kind of like that Trae Young theory. When you play the Bucks without Damian Lillard, you kind of know the game plan. Do whatever to stop Giannis, and then if any of these guys have a night, that's okay because they're not going to do it the next night.
Right. And,
most likely, I should say.
Right. And to Mo's point, that was kind of my analysis with this series going into it. Like the Bucks, and this has kind of been the thing that's plagued them all season. When you look at the guys they put on the court, you either have old role players around Giannis, or you have young guys that you just don't know who they are as a player. And I guess to speak on the Kuzma point, Kuzma this season only averaged 9 points a game against this Pacers team. He went scoreless in game 1. He only has 4 at the half right now. So either the Pacers and their collective group just confuses Kuzma, he doesn't know what to do, or like you said, Kuzma's not the guy that the Bucks clearly thought they were getting when they traded him. Because I feel like, once again, to go to Mo's point, they moved Middleton because Middleton is now early 30s. The injuries have definitely caught up with him. They saw an opportunity to get a younger player who, plays at the 4, is supposed to be a versatile player, and they, jumped the gun on that one. But yeah, he's like, Kuzma's not a winning type of player. He was asked to be basically the number 2.
That's always my problem with, trading for players from, and I hate to say Washington, for example, but players who play on really bad teams, it's inflated stats. It's inflated stats, and I would never look too much into that. As where if you're trading, if Kyle Kuzma was on maybe and I would probably say almost any other team in the league,
Mm-hmm.
and he was producing what he was producing, I feel like you would feel more comfortable with it. But he was producing as probably most likely the number one option on the Wizards. And it's just, you kind of got what you got.
Mm-hmm. Which Mo said he was the third option because I mean I
Oh,
think
I don't think I
Poole
can hear
was
you.
technically like the one, maybe Sar or some of these other guys were
Ooh.
too. Like it seems like the way Kuzma is. Oh, we'll get Dylan back in here in a second. The way Kuzma plays, if he's your fourth or fifth option, like you feel pretty good about it because that would take pressure off of him and pressure off of kind of you as a fan in your expectations for him. Like he's supposed to be, like I said, he should be a guy that, especially in today's NBA, with the skill set you think he has, like he should be able to contribute consistently. But I don't know if it's something between the ears, the mentality, or in his chest, whether he has a desire to do it. Something is missing with this guy, and
Maybe he just hates
he's
Indiana.
off to a terrible start if he wants to kind of get Bucks fans on his side. Like
Maybe he just hates
they
Indiana.
could have excused the regular season if he had turned up a little bit in the playoffs. He didn't do it in game one. He sure is off to a start where he's not going to do it in game two. And for a Bucks team with Dame just now coming back from all of his stuff, not a lot to be optimistic about in this series. And look, they're only down by 8. So if they can steal this one, like they'd have to feel good about going into game 3 back in Milwaukee.
There we go.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, the way that series is going, it's like Milwaukee maybe gets like game 3 or 4. Indy will probably get one in Milwaukee, and then it probably ends like game 5 back in Indy. I just don't see the way it's going right now, that series going any further than that. Yeah, should be your fourth or fifth option. Yeah. If you're a really good team, he might be a 6th man.
True.
Knicks Pistons. That series is tied up at 1 apiece as the Pistons won last night. So I guess when you look at these two teams, do we actually know who the better team is looking at these first 2 games? Because the Pistons are the lower seed. The Knicks have all the hype being in New York, making the Cat trade and all that. But if you look at game 1, Detroit was holding their own until that crazy 21-0 run where you saw their inexperience. I got to give them credit for the way they bounced back in game 2 with the Knicks crowd that was raucous because they had already won game 1 and the way that they showed out. Like, am I crazy to think that the Pistons are the actual better team in this series?
No, I don't think you are at all. I think it really, what it comes down to is, kind of the same thing we would say about the Rockets or, like the Thunder. It's just, they just haven't done it enough yet. They kind of don't have that playoff experience. So, playoff basketball is different than regular season basketball. It's a different air. It's a different atmosphere. So, yeah, this Pistons team on paper looks like they're arguably better. But, you look at the Knicks and the rosters that they have, a lot of these guys that they have like Jalen Brunson, for example, a playoff guy. Josh Hart, he's a scrapper. That man will do anything. You have Karl-Anthony Towns, who's kind of been here before. You have all these different players that are kind of like built up that mold of like a strong veteran team. And definitely on paper, it doesn't look like they can keep up with the Pistons, but the Pistons make more mistakes.
Yeah.
So, and then that might come into like a little bit tighter coaching and different things like that. Obviously, they made the proper adjustments from the first game to the second game to actually win, make New York score less. Kind of that run did not happen in that second game. So kind of what their first game 1 game plan was, outside of that run. So, I mean, yeah, I think if you're a Pistons fan, you go into, Detroit for your next 2 games and you feel really confident about it. Because now you'll be able to do, that the game plan that you tried in game 1, can work in game 2, the different changes that you make. And now you get to go into your home atmosphere with it. So, man, if I were Knicks, I'd be a little bit worried. But, the Knicks are that type of team. they're able to go on a 21-0 run like that. You know, if the things are clicking for them, they have a lot of great basketball players that can make that work.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of that run was, Detroit first time playoff in New York. They might have got caught up in the moment a little bit too much, which I think in game 3, what you're going to look for, will the Pistons be too excited playing back in Detroit? And we've seen teams that they're too amped for a playoff game. Maybe they're committing silly fouls because they're trying to make a play that's not there, or they try to take a 3 to get the crowd into it, or a knockout shot in like the first quarter where you don't need it. That's what I want to see, like the composure of Detroit. Game 3 in Detroit, what do they look like when they come out? If they come out composed and execute and all that, yeah, I fully expect them to beat the Knicks in game 3. And then once the Knicks are down in the series, we'll learn a lot about this Knicks team, whether or not they have it in them. Because like I said, there's questions about Cat and his ability. Mikal Bridges still hasn't lived up to the 5 draft picks they traded for him. OG Anunoby, I feel like when given the opportunity, he performs a little bit. Mitchell Robinson, all these guys like that, all these analysts thought the Knicks could have been contenders early in the season. Like, get them down in this series. That pressure from the New York media will start weighing on this Knicks team. That's where the Pistons. That's going to be the Pistons' opportunity. Game 3, make a statement, and I think they'll be able to get it done. Final series: Celtics and the Magic. Game 1, the Celtics win. Was it by 17? Something like that, 103-86, I believe.
Yep.
There was a moment where Tatum, went up, got hit, went down, landed on his wrist. They say he's doubtful for tomorrow. I kind of think a lot of that is, they kind of think they'll be able to beat this Magic team even if he sits. Like if they were down 1-0, I feel like Tatum could play, but just to be cautious with it. What's
deep in a playoff?
What's up with the Magic? Because when I look at the Magic, I'm like, Banchero, legit star. Everybody else, not good enough. So
again,
can the Magic kind of be a Pistons-like team where if they build it out correctly, like the Magic could be a team that could be a problem in the East next few years?
My personal opinion, I think this Magic team could be better than this Pistons team if you look at the people they have around them. Kind of like what we talked about again this whole time, the Rockets, the Pistons, the Magic, these teams have not been here yet, especially with the roster that they have now. Granted, to the Magic's credit, they were up in that game. Like, weren't they up in like the third quarter? It kind of took like a good end of third quarter.
Well, they went into the half up. Yeah.
To kind of turn it around. And that's signs you like to see. The Magic have the worst draw out of it. You're this young team hitting the playoffs for the first time, and you're facing, the team who's probably been the staple of consistency for the last couple of years with Boston, at least being able to make it to championships and conference finals. So you get the worst draw of the bunch when it comes to playoff matchups. And you played well in your first game. Yeah, it wasn't a win. Yeah, you lost by over 10 points, over 15 points. But you looked very well into this game. You folded under the pressure to a great championship team that's greatly coached. Understandable. Go into the second game, without Tatum, you have something to prove. This could be a big Banchero game. You just go out there and you just play. If you look at the surrounding people by them, after this first game, I don't think you should take too much credit to what they are, because Franz Wagner is really good. You have some of these young guards. You even saw in that playoff game what you could get from someone like Anthony Black. You just kind of need these younger guys to step up. You need to let them feel it like it's their moment and then play. They'll get that in due time. I could see, because even when this Celtics Magic got matched up, I saw at least the Magic taking a game. Because this team is so talented. As we're talking about the Rockets Warriors, and the Warriors could sweep. I think this Magic team is more talented than this Rockets team. So you just got to learn the moments. You got to learn the moments, get the proper coaching in. And it was not a good game for the surrounding people. It's also their first playoff game for most of these guys. So Paulo Banchero did his thing, and that's what you want from your superstar. You just kind of need the other pieces to fall in line. And I feel a little bit different if maybe Banchero had a really bad performance and maybe his like supporting pieces played just, did their thing. But Banchero played good, and it's just his supporting pieces had an off night in their first playoff game. So that's just how I view it for right now. If we go into, the game tomorrow and, the Celtics just beat the brakes out of them without Jason Tatum, then maybe you can kind of maybe want to address a couple things. But for now, I'm okay with it. The Magic just have sadly the worst draw of the bunch playing the Celtics.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. It's like Banchero's bona fide. Wagner, he played okay. Like he had some turnover issues that I think really hurt them. I feel like when you look at these two teams, you see that glaring need for the Magic to get a playmaking point guard who can kind of tell Banchero, what spot to get into, get in the ball, so that Banchero doesn't feel like he has to create 100% of the time for himself. And when you have the depth that the Celtics have, especially on the wing, like that's tough because you're relying on guys like Wendell Carter, KCP, Gary Harris to have to step up when I don't think they're that kind of player. And because of that, yeah, this series probably doesn't go that long. But like you said, the Magic is more about playoff experience while tweaking the roster so that maybe 2 years from now, maybe you're a top 4 seed. Because it seems like you might be you're probably the best team in your division in the Southeast. So you feel like you can win that division consistently over the next few years. But now it's like, can you move up from a 7 seed to like a 5 seed next year? Then the year after that, can you be a 3 seed? It just showed that improvement.
I mean, to be fair, let's look at the last couple of years, because we've been doing this for a little bit now. If we look at a couple of years ago, if we looked at, when the Thunder, before they blew up, we were like, what is one team that could do it? We were like, man, it's the Thunder. And then they did it. And then, last year, who was it? Probably the Rockets, the Pistons. Both those guys did it. And, I could definitely expect, let's say the Rockets maybe if they don't do anything, don't change anything, take a step back or something like that. Or, maybe something happens to some of these better teams. You could see a team like the Magic just kind of be like this new, like, polarizing young star team, You could see a team like the Magic, maybe, being a 4 seed next year. And that wouldn't surprise people because out of recent years, from what we've seen from, like, the Thunder, the Rockets, and even the Pistons this year, these young teams can do it. How far can they go? We'll see. But these young teams are competing. These young teams are good. They have stars. They just need to figure it out. They're making their teams in the process. They just don't have it yet as like a Celtics, or some of these like the Nuggets where they have these bona fide superstars, who have been there, done that, and can carry a team. They're trying to make theirs right now, and that's the biggest problem.
Right.
And the only way to make them is getting in the playoffs and doing it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. All right. So obviously, next week we'll check back in on where these series are. Some may be over by next week. We don't know. But want to move on to the NBA awards, look at some of these and kind of get your thought on who you feel like will win this. We'll start with the big one, MVP. Now, they obviously told us the finalists. We got Giannis, Shea, and Jokic. Who do you think will take MVP this year?
Who I think will take it, I think hands down will be Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Who I think should win it. Man, I think people just get like voting tiredness, recency biased, and stuff like that. But Nikola Jokic is so good. And I guess cool, the Thunder are the number 1 seed. Shea Gilgeous was the top scorer in the league. All that's cool and all. But, man, if you just look at how bad the Nuggets are without Nikola Jokic and just what he's able to bring on the court, and just the concept he's the first player to have 30, 20, 20 in a season, I just think just speaks volumes to how good Nikola Jokic is. I'm all glad for Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. I live in Oklahoma. It's going to be great for the community for someone to win an MVP, just kind of bring something back. But, man, Nikola Jokic is just so good of a player not to just automatically give it to him every year. And he proves that he deserves it almost every year too. Same with Giannis.
Mm-hmm.
I think Nikola Jokic and Giannis in the finals for the MVP is like something we've been seeing for like the last 5-6 years. So
Mhm.
this isn't anything surprising. They'll give it to Shea because Shea was the top scorer with one of the top teams in basketball. Cool, he definitely deserves it. The Thunder are a way better team without Shea Gilgeous as well, but the Thunder have so many great other pieces that have been able to show them they can pick up if Shea, barring, has a bad night, as where like the Nuggets literally crack and fold and break if Nikola Jokic isn't at least subpar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. Like, it's crazy to think, Westbrook averaged a triple double. He won MVP, and Jokic averaged a triple double and will come up second, most likely, because, like you said, it's kind of been a foregone conclusion all year that this is kind of SGA's year to win the MVP. So I agree with you. SGA wins it. Jokic probably should have won it, but he's already won a couple already. Rookie of the year. We talked about a couple of these guys already. You got Stephon Castle, you got Zachary Richardson, and Jalen Wells, Jalen Wells did get hurt later in the season, so you feel like that probably hurt his campaign for this one. But, who do you see winning this one? I think the consensus is it's probably going to be Castle. You agree with them?
I do agree. I think Stephen Castle played, even granted, Risha was a really good this season as well, too, the first overall pick. I just think you had someone like Stephen Castle who played on a team that had a team like Victor Wembanyama, even a guy like Chris Paul, and he still stood out on his own manner as a rookie and played very well for himself. So I would definitely say give it to Stephon Castle. You could give it to one of those two guys, and I'm not going to complain. I won't have any qualms about that as well.
Okay. Yeah. I agree. Like Risha came on late, but I feel like Castle is the more consistent player, so he definitely should get that one. Defense player of the year. Look, Hawks represented again. You got Dyson Daniels, who led the league in steals, I believe. Oh no, or didn't Jokic lead the league in steals or something like that? But he was up there. You had Draymond Green, who for like the last 2-3 weeks has been telling everybody he should be defense player of the year. Mobley, I feel like might be maybe the least talked about guy of the three, but Mobley just does work, and with his versatility on the defensive end, obviously helps the Cavs out a lot. So who do you have winning it between these three?
Man, as much as it'd be cool to see Dyson Daniels win it, it will most likely be Draymond. And a lot of what Draymond Green does doesn't show up in stat sheets. They aren't stat-related things. If you can just keep someone just with off-ball defense super well, that doesn't show. And that's what Draymond Green is. He's one of the best off-ball defenders, if not one of the best off-ball forwards when it comes to his defensive capability. You can just see what he can do to a guy like Giannis or Zion Williamson, some of these just like great, just good bigs inside the league. And the things Draymond Green does, how flustered he's able to make them, how much he can kind of change their dynamic of the game is good. And just how much of it, and I know people have their mixed emotions about him. That man's a leader. That man's a leader no matter what you say. He might yell, he might scream, he might annoy you, but he's going to get you back on that track, and he's going to make sure you play well. And as much as I would love to see Dyson Daniels win, and as much as it hurts to be a Hawks fan and have two guys do it, be nominated for awards and not win either, Draymond deserves it. This Warriors team was one of the best ranked defensive teams, before the All-Star break, and we're still top 10 after the All-Star break. I think that speaks volumes to who this Warriors team is, also being one of the better offensive teams within the league. And the reason that the Warriors are so good defensively is because of Draymond Green.
Okay. Look, I think Draymond's going to have a good case for it. I gotta feel like Mobley gets this one. And I think for Mobley, I feel like the consistent run he's had all season. I think with Draymond Green, like a lot of the defensive improvement is being attributed to him, but you got to remember they did add Butler as well, who's a pretty good defender in his own right. And I feel like that has helped Draymond play defense as well for the Warriors. Whereas I think with Mobley, he's kind of the same. He plays at the 4, sometimes at the 5. He's very versatile defensively. He can guard multiple positions. And look, the Cavs' better record, so that might work in Mobley's favor. Because when you think of their defense, I feel like even though Jarrett Allen's there, I think you put a little bit more on their performance towards Mobley. Because Allen's going to guard like 5s and maybe 4s he can switch to. Mobley's got to worry about 3, 4, 5, and even sometimes some of these guards in pick and roll. And he holds his own. So I'd give it to Mobley.
Just my case with Draymond is if you look at Mobley gets limited at some point where on his defenses where like you can honestly match up Draymond against any single person on a team.
That's fair.
And he's going to be able to play. Plus, he was number 1. And I know people don't really care or look too much into metrics, but man, he was number 1 in defensive metrics too. So,
right, and obviously that's kind of an aspect of a lot of these stats that, unless you're like deep into them, some of the metric stuff may fly over your head. I do think it is worthwhile in these conversations to absolutely use the analytics like that. So that does work for Green that he is number 1 based off of the metrics.
I think this is the closest award race because I've been just scrolling through and looking just throughout the days, the last couple of days, just like people's predictions, and literally it could be a panel of like 6. It could be a panel of 8 people. 3 have Draymond, 3 have Daniels, 2 have Mobley, or exchange it anywhere you want. And people are really torn about who it could be. All these guys have a great case to do it. Because even if we didn't talk about Daniels in this case, but what Daniels was doing, with stealing the ball, man, it was crazy. He was going on like a generational run for a little bit there. And that just speaks volumes as well too. Something we haven't seen since the steal record was broken. So I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely give Dyson Daniels a lot of love. I mean, look, he was from the DeJounte Murray trade. So, I think you said this a little earlier, like, if you're a Hawks fan, you feel good about it. You got a young guy who can defend other teams' wing players, and in the East, that's pretty valuable when you look at some of the wings that are out there in the Eastern Conference up and down it. So,
I think Dyson Daniels is the perfect guard next to Trae Young too. Because whoever is that big offensive guy, Trae Young doesn't need to guard him. Dyson Daniels is a bigger guy. He can obviously be a problem, just on-ball defense a lot. No, he's perfect for him. And it sucks that it took, the DeJounte Murray trade to realize that, but, the DeJounte Murray trade is what got him in there. So,
yeah.
I think if you're a Hawks fan, literally you would take this season over last season every single time. You have a potential Rookie of the Year nominee and a potential Defensive Player of the Year nominee. Yeah, you might not have made the playoffs. Trae Young still played exceptionally well, too. You just kind of have to, find the rest connectors is what I would say.
Okay. And look, speaking of Dyson Daniels, he's up for another one. Most improved player. We got Cade Cunningham, talked about earlier, the leap he's kind of made from last year to this year. Dyson Daniels coming over from New Orleans. And you got Zubac from the Clippers, the man in the middle there. How do you see this one playing out? Who takes this one?
I would say probably most improved is a weird award because there's not really a consensus on how people really vote for it. I'm probably just gonna go ahead and give it to Cade Cunningham just because what he's done with this Pistons team, taking him to the playoffs, everything like that. As much as I'd love to give it to Dyson Daniels, he was always known as a pretty good defensive guard. He just had more minutes, more time to shine than New Orleans would even give him himself. So he had an opportune time to really, kind of show what he was. And Zubac is really good. I think it's a race between, Zubac and Cade Cunningham.
Okay. I mean, I feel like with this one, I would give it to Zubac. I think the importance that he's shown for that Clippers team, I mean, if you, I guess, just look at numbers wise, last season he was like a 12-9 kind of guy, played 68 games, 26 minutes. This year, you up his minutes to 33. You got 17 and 13 from him. He played 80 games as well. So I just think for a guy who had career numbers of 10 and 8 to be a 17 and 3 kind of guy this year, and with where the Clippers finished and everything like that, and when you think about the Clippers, you think of Zubac in the middle as like their. I feel like at some point, like their lone big man. I feel like he's gonna end up taking this one.
I agree with that. I like it.
Let's see. Six man, we already know. Peyton Pritchard won. Okay, so clutch player of the year, I feel like is one of those that it's kind of hard to quantify that unless you do look at some deep metric. But I guess you want to quickly give a prediction with this one. You got Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, or Nikola Jokic.
One thing that kind of upsets me, and this is just going to be my bias showing, how was Trae Young not a nominee for this? Because even watching that Heat's playing game, he was literally top. He was number one in like the clutch time stats. He was number one in 4 of their categories. He was 3rd in the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, I don't know really how they rank this per se. If I just had to give it to in person, I would say Anthony Edwards. He had with those clutch time rankings, he had the most points in the clutch out of those 3 guys. I really don't care. When I look at a guy who, and it'd be if I had to pick just because of what we've seen, if there's a guy who I could trust, kind of take over that game. Brunson's cool and all, but I can trust Anthony Edwards to do it. I can trust Jokic to do it. I can trust Anthony Edwards to take over on his own dime whenever he wants, if he's feeling like it. So I'll just go ahead and give it to Anthony Edwards.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, this is one that's like weird to figure out what you're supposed to be looking for. So yeah, I feel like I'll just throw a dart as well and probably say Anthony Edwards. I don't know. That one, I feel like I don't want to spend too much time on. Coach of the year. I think this one's going to be an interesting race as well. You have Kenny Atkinson. What's going on, Liam? Anthony Edwards is the worst NBA player of all time. Okay. You have Kenny Atkinson, who goes into Cleveland. Like Cleveland was good last year, but they obviously are better under Atkinson. You got Bickerstaff with Detroit, who failed in Cleveland, and then all he did was take Detroit. It basically tripled their win total from last year. And you have Ime Udoka, who took Houston, led them to the 2 seed out west. So who is your coach of the year?
I'm going to go ahead and say Kenny Atkinson. You look at this Cleveland team, just how he was able to turn around from last year's season to this year. I mean, they were below 15 offensive team to being the number 1 offensive team. Just in the one off season, going from, they started off the season, 15-0, 16-0, something along those lines. I just think if you look at how the Cavaliers were this year and how we looked at them going into the season, we didn't think the Cavs were probably going to be this number 1 overall seed. We didn't think the Cavs were going to be dominant. How we thought of the East, it was like it was the Celtics and who's actually going to fall in line this year. It was the Cavaliers, and they did it very well. Best team in the NBA this year, best team record-wise. Well, not best team in the NBA, but best team record-wise this year in the NBA. And like I said, just the jumps they made from stats is just it's crazy. I'd give it to Atkinson.
Okay, I'd go Bickerstaff. I think if you can take a team and like triple their win total, I find it hard not to make you the coach of the year, especially getting in as a 6 seed. Maybe if they were a playing team, I'd feel a little bit different about it. But the fact that they were a playoff team with the young group that they have, which if you look at their roster, not much changed from last year to this year, yet the win total went up exponentially. So I think because of that, I would give it a JB. But Atkinson definitely has a claim to it as well. So does Ime, but I think I would go JB. All right, that's actually the last award we got. So we can move on to where is it? Here we go. Mock draft time.
Let's go.
Yeah, this is something we've been waiting to do. It is draft week. What week better than this week to do it? So I feel like normally we would do the like Dylan taking the Seahawks, I take the Patriots, and we go through a couple of rounds. But instead, we're just going to go through, do the first round. I guess we'll talk about who we think will be drafted at what position. And look, maybe next week we'll see how close we were on the first round. So let's do all here. I mean, I guess for you looking at this, like, is it big enough for you to like differentiate the players that are on the board and everything like that?
It'll be okay. I'm gonna run a mock as well too while it goes on, just so we have the right picks.
Okay. All right. So let's do this. All right. Titans up. I guess we'll do it based off of no trades. Like we'll just do it as the order they're in, who we think will go where. Unless you want to go with a trade, we'll see. But
I'm fine with it. It makes it more interesting.
Okay. Titans at 1. Like, is this not just obviously Cam Ward?
No, it's obviously Cam Ward.
Yeah.
I maybe like it's so crazy how the start of the season has changed from what we thought it could be to what it is now. As like when you look at the start of this draft process, it was a way different thought as who it could be to what it is now. Cam Ward's the solidified lock.
Let's see. I've only just gotten to the NBA the last couple of months. Okay, Liam. You said John Morant's your favorite player. Don't know much about the NFL. I get it. Yeah, so we'll just go Cam Ward because Cam Ward's basically telling people he's going to be a Titan. I don't know if you've seen that. Like, he's been on Fortnite streets talking about how he loves Treylon Burks and all this kind of stuff. Like, how he loves Calvin Ridley. Like, yeah, he clearly knows he's going to go to Tennessee. So not much there. After that, I think the draft gets interesting. The Browns at 2. Like, obviously, if we were doing trades and stuff, this is the first opportunity you think a trade could happen. You look at Cleveland. They have a need at quarterback. But if they don't get Cam Ward, obviously, they may feel like they don't need to go at quarterback. So who do you think the Browns would take?
Travis Hunter.
That's what I feel like, yeah.
I feel like maybe you could put Abdul Carter in there. I don't even think they're sniffing about the quarterbacks. It doesn't seem like even later on this draft process they've talked to anyone. It seems like the only person out of this top 5, or I'd even say probably outside of like this top 10, maybe, I don't know what the Saints are doing. They're super unpredictable. But the Giants met with Shedeur, but both sides of their front office are completely split on to take him or not. So I just think, that kind of pushes you away to wanting to do that. The Browns love Travis Hunter. They view him at receiver, which is something I think Travis Hunter would want to do more anyways as well, too. And it's a big need of theirs, one of their biggest needs, if not. The Browns could take best player available, and that's Travis Hunter at this current second. You could maybe say Abdul Carter, but if you didn't have Myles Garrett and you just didn't re-sign Myles Garrett to this deal, you could take Abdul Carter, and I wouldn't blink an eye. But Travis Hunter is so versatile and something you can just throw wherever on that field. It'll be good. And the Cleveland Browns need someone like that. The Cleveland Browns just need someone that like the fan base can be excited for. And that's someone that's Travis Hunter. He can go out there, catch 7 passes, 120 yards, a touchdown, and get an interception. And that fan base is going to go nuclear because they've never had something like that before. Or just even that, just that hype. This Browns team has been in the deep depths of, of the last couple of years. So getting a guy like Travis Hunter will just change so much for you guys.
Right. And look, I agree. I feel like early in the process, Abdul Carter seemed like the pick there. And the further we got into it, we just kept hearing about, how much they loved Travis Hunter. I mean, when they went to the Colorado workout, they basically took everybody from the front office up there to watch. Clearly, they were looking at Travis Hunter because, like I said, they never have been all that enamored with Shedeur, at least at number 2. So, yeah, Travis Hunter's going to be the pick there. Giants are up next as another team that needs a quarterback. Like you said, they have talked to Shedeur at least. But if Abdul Carter's out there, would they be enticed to go that route? So, what do you think the Giants do here?
Abdul Carter. I think these first 3 picks are like – and I think the draft really starts with your team at 4 because, the Patriots could go a couple of different directions and people would understand I think these first 3 picks are just locked and sealed. I think the draft envelope's already made for them. Granted, we're gonna have to wait 15 picks for these picks to be announced. These picks have already been made. I think this was the order without a doubt. Maybe and if it changes, Abdul Carter goes 2, Travis Hunter goes 3. And so I don't think too much changes on it. Abdul Carter's good. Kayvon Thibodeau hasn't been that guy the Giants thought he was going to be a potential trade candidate this year too. I think you just look at Abdul Carter. He's probably the best player on most people's boards. It's between him and Travis Hunter. Only reason Cam Ward's going 1 is because Tennessee needs a quarterback. If this was a draft, Tennessee didn't need a quarterback. One of these 2 guys would go number 1 without a doubt. So, yeah, Abdul Carter, great edge help. He was a game record in the 1 year he played edge with Penn State, just absolutely obliterated, led the college football on most of the stats. So, yeah, it has to be Abdul Carter here.
Yeah. Yeah,
quarterback room of Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston now. Do you think sitting Shedeur as your 3rd string is really the smartest option here? Or is, kind of seeing how this QB room can play out and just kind of building around that? And let's say when you get a rookie quarterback, he's going into like a Jaden Daniels type of situation where team's kind of set up pretty well for you. You just got to be good.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. Like, you bring Sanders there into that quarterback room, and whoever you have as starter, if they struggle, the fans won't sit there and call out for the veteran backup. Like, they'll want to see Shedeur, and then that's like, I know Belichick used to talk about that like a lot. Like, you can't have your backup be like more popular than the starter, because then that puts a lot of pressure on the starter. And you brought up Kayvon Thibodeau. I feel like if Kayvon Thibodeau had been playing better, the Giants probably wouldn't go, with Abdul Carter here. But Abdul Carter with the talent can kind of fix what Thibodeau kind of hasn't been so far. So I agree, it's going to be Abdul Carter. And like I said, 4 is where it gets interesting. I feel like this would be probably a prime position for the first trade. But if they stick and pick, where do you think they go? They have glaring needs, obviously, at tackle, wide receiver. Basically just O-line in general. But, like, who do you think they take here at 4?
I think the pick they'll probably go with it will be most likely Will Campbell. You could maybe make a case for Amon Membu. But I do think this is a prime trade spot. I think this is, if the Patriots trade, they will, because I heard teams are enamored with Ashton Genty, which is also another that you guys could go after. The Patriots could stick and pick and just take Genty at 4 if they wanted to as well, too. That's something I think the Patriots would do necessarily. It's just, granted, he would change your whole running back core and everything you would do. You still have a guy like Ramondre Stevenson, someone you can trust on, to whereas maybe that might seem more, and I don't want to say luxury pick, because I think there's, like 3 blue chip prospects in this draft, and it's Hunter, Carter, and Genty. So just taking the number 3 guy or number 2 guy, however you have him ranked on your board, just at 4, it's not a big deal at all. But they're going to be smart, especially with someone like having Drake May there. With offensive line needing to be your help, it'll be a battle between Will Campbell and Amon Membu, and I just think Will Campbell will be that guy that they'll stick and pick at. A lot of people have concerns about his length, his size, different things like that. I don't think it matters. He's odd. If he has the potential, I'm not going to say potential, but right now he is the best day 1 tackle starter in the league. Now, has potential to be way better than that. I don't think you're going to get a better prospect at offensive line than what you're going to get at Will Campbell, like someone you can just plug and play right away. And having a guy like Drake May, kind of building up this team, you want to kind of see a little bit more results. Having a guy like Will Campbell will help that.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like this one's going to come down to probably Campbell or Genty, because I do know that people within the Patriots like Genty. I just think that when they look at the tackle class versus maybe the running back class, if you don't get one of the top tier tackles, I think there is a bit of a drop. Whereas running back class, I think, is seen as a much deeper group, so they'll probably dip into the running backs like in the later round. But yeah. And plus, Will Campbell he seems like a Mike Vrabel kind of guy.
To a T, he does, yeah.
Yeah. All right, the Jags at 5. Where do they go? This is going to be an important season for the Jags. Trevor Lawrence has struggled the past couple of years. They're going through a lot of turmoil where new coaches and everything like that. So this is going to be an important pick for them to kind of set the tone for next year. What do they do?
So there's 3 guys on my board here.
Mm-hmm.
Mason Graham,
Okay.
Ashton Jeanty, and Ted McMillan. I think just given how the difference people view Ted McMillan, some people think he's, a 60 overall prospect, as some think he's the best receiver on the board, hands down. I think maybe Jacksonville's going to board something like that. You have a guy like Brian Thomas Jr., you brought in De'Ami Brown, as where a receiver doesn't seem a big luxury here. I've been hearing this, and this is why I think the Patriots are a prime trade-up spot.
Mm-hmm.
I like Ashton Jeanty here to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yes, you have Travis Etienne on your team, but he hasn't been that guy you kind of hope for him to be. He could be someone you could move for, maybe a 4th, 5th round pick from a specific team, kind of recuperate some of that loss you have there. Man,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get a guy like Ashton Jeanty. You said it yourself. This is a big year for Jacksonville. You have to have some results here. And a guy who's going to give you results out of all these guys, it's Ashton Jeanty. This is a very deep inside defensive line class, is where
Mm-hmm.
you could argue Mason Graham's probably not even the number one the inside defensive guy. You could say Walter Nolan is. He had an amazing season as well too, as where Jeanty is hand down a game wrecker. I think you take him. You could keep ET in there. Kind of make him like a better pass catching down, because Jeanty does have a little bit of issues when it comes to pass catching.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, I think you go Ashton Jeanty here. You take the best player available, and you know how much that's going to do for that offense, how much relief it's going to give someone for Trevor Lawrence, how much it's going to be able to spread the ball out with Brian Thomas, things like that. Because an issue Jacksonville's had is they haven't had a consistent run game. You throw a guy like Jeanty in there, that's fixed up. That's completely fixed up. You give Trevor Lawrence more time to work well. I think you go Jeanty here.
Okay. I mean, I probably would lean Graham only because it's a copycat league. The Eagles won with great members in the trenches, defensive line, and offensive line. And look, the Jags could obviously take some help on the offensive line as well. But with Graham as a guy who can kind of disrupt things right up the middle, I feel like that would be important to them. But I feel like the most recent days I've been hearing that Jeanty is kind of a legit possibility there. So I would not have a problem with that. And plus, Travis Etienne has not worked out. So you get a chance to get a legit running back. Why not take him? All right, the Raiders are a team who probably, if Jeanty fell to them, they may look at him as well, because they did just get Geno Smith. We know Pete Carroll loves big backs, or like bell cow backs to go with their quarterback. So with Jeanty off the board, what do the Raiders do?
It's interesting. There's 2 guys I really like here. It's between Mason Graham and Amon Menbu. I think Amon Menbu just comes up in here. We'll see a run on tackles. We could see probably 3 tackles go in the top 10. You look at a team like New York, who is picking right after you, they'll take Menbu. If Menbu's on the board, they'll take him. And you have it's just a tough choice of what do you rather need? Would you rather have someone like Mason Graham, who kind of fit very well with Max Crosby? Or do you want a guy who's going to protect, trading for someone like Geno Smith and giving him that, giving him that extension, different things like that. Again, I think this is just a super deep class when it comes to interior defensive line, because you have someone like Derek Harmon, who's going to go later in the first round, but is arguably a top 15 talent when it comes to these tackles. I like Amon Menbu here. You just protect your offensive line. You just traded for a quarterback and gave him a ton of money. If you don't take him here, the Jets are going to take him. Make it a little tough for them. Just take the best, who you think the best player probably is on the board, or who's going to help you best with your current situation. I think just getting a big versatile tackle like Amon Menbu is going to help. I do really, really like Mason Graham here as well too, just because there's that need at defensive tackle that would have very much helped as well. But you got to protect Geno. If you look at, the Seahawks blueprint, his biggest struggles were, outside of his late game choices, is Seattle had horrible offensive line. So, give him something he can help out with, kind of fill it out, because I know they're almost there finishing out that offensive line. They just need a little bit more tackle help.
Yeah. And look, isn't there like talks about Colton Miller and some issues there with him and the Raiders? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that kind of puts more of that need in the spotlight. So yeah, Membu, yeah, I agree with that one. Okay, so now Membu's the guy who you said the Jets would probably be interested in. He is now gone. So what do the Jets do here at 7?
So I was struggling with this at first, but then I remembered just how much the Jets love Tyler Warren. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Warren. I mean,
Yep.
again, if Membu was here, maybe Mason Graham might be your pick here if you really like are totally sold on him. But it seems like throughout this whole draft prospect, they've just really liked Tyler Warren. He's kind of just been that backup plan. Like, let's say if like an Armand Membu isn't there, or Will Campbell isn't there, or something along those lines. Just Tyler Warren's that guy. You give Justin Fields another trusty target. Someone.
Mm-hmm.
Tight ends have been going higher and higher for recently. Look how great Brock Bowers was last year. Arguably one of the best tight ends just in the league last year in his rookie season. Take a guy like Tyler Warren. If you really like him, he can be a game changer for you. So,
yeah, I mean, look, you got Justin Fields. Why not get him a safety blanket at the tight end position? Yeah, so that definitely does seem like the right pick there. Carolina at 8. Carolina's had I feel like Carolina had kind of an under the radar offseason. They seem like they put a lot of attention into shoring up the defense. I think they did a little bit on offense, but here, do you see them kind of continuing that process with the defense, or do they go with a weapon for Bryce Young?
man, if there was like a solid, and it's just I'm gonna go. They're gonna stick on the defensive side just because we just don't know how people have Ted McMillan ranked.
Right.
Just some have him higher. And personally, if we get to the Cowboys at 12, I think there might be a receiver that will go ahead of him. I like Jalen Walker here. He's tested super well. I heard he's been like the best interviewee to have during this whole draft prospect. Super great linebacker, kind of just does a lot of different things. He can play edge. He can kind of play back and pass coverage if you need him to. He's a guy who can kind of mix all around on the field for whatever you need for that scheme at the time. I think he's a super good player. He's super smart, and just teams have loved him throughout this whole entire process. I think you get a solid player within Jalen Walker. Again, maybe if Ted McMillan was more solidified as a true number one and people didn't have as much questions on him as they did before, did throughout this process, I'd be like, Ted McMillan, no problem. But I really like Jalen Walker here. That's like one of the number one mock picks I see that I'm like, that just makes so much sense not to happen. And I know when they say if it makes too much sense, it probably won't, but sometimes it does. Jalen Walker here.
Yeah. And look, I think Jalen Walker, because we talked about the Patriots at 4, I think the Patriots, if they did trade back, it might be to get into this range for a Jalen Walker.
Agreed. That's very favorable guy.
Yeah. All right. He's off the board. Saints are up at 9. I feel like the Saints, it's too obvious here. Derek Carr, shoulder injury, may not play next year. Do you like Spencer Rattler? Shedeur Sanders is sitting out there. Where do they go with this one?
Man, I was very big on the Shedeur to the Saints trade, but it just seems like the Shedeur hype keeps going lower and lower. And I've seen different things, and I've heard some things recently. It's like people kind of explain it. It's like, why draft Shedeur when this team is not ready? Why not build around and then try next year and, kind of plug in that guy when you have a better roster to give him? A guy I really like at this range and he's kind of fell, from where we thought he initially would, Mason Graham.
Okay.
There's a need for defensive inside guys there. Brian Brzee hasn't really been that guy they really thought he was going to be neither. Mason Graham's kind of someone you can fit very schematically well. He's someone that you just shore up a very big need on your defensive side of the ball. The Saints lucked out on having a really, really, really deep skill position in this year's draft to where they can use different picks to kind of just fill that out. They could draft a guy like a Ted McMillan or Shedeur Sanders, but who is he going to throw to? And it's just going to kind of stunt his growth. It's kind of stunt anything they have is where sorry, you not wasted, but you spent a late pick on Spencer Rattler. You spent a late pick on Jake Haener. You can kind of just let them go out there and see if you can strike gold with them and, maybe work around them and draft that backup next year. But I think if you draft Shedeur, you're just I'm not sure what you can get out of him now, unless you find a stud at receiver or running back, or he just ends up being that guy. I think you're taking too big of a risk when the Saints can't afford to really take risks like that anymore. They did, and now they're negative $30 million in the cap space and really are kind of in a big, deep purgatory. I think if you take Shedeur, you might have something. You might have a little bit better seasons, but I feel like you're kind of if you take Shedeur, you have to think he's a franchise guy. But even if he is that franchise guy, you don't have a franchise to build around him.
Okay. No, I mean, look, it definitely makes a lot of sense what you're saying. And I feel like when you're the Saints, you got a new coach down there, you can kind of go several different ways with this one because, I mean, look, the Saints still have their cap issues, and they just kind of just need talent wherever they can get it. So if you can get a guy who could be the fourth or fifth best prospect down at 9, hard to pass that up. The Bears on the clock at 10. The Bears had a really good offseason, addressed the offensive line, and now it's like you're almost in a position where you're just taking best player available and you're feeling confident in your ability next season to compete in a really tough division. So what do you see them doing here at 10?
I think the Bears are really upset that Mason Graham went at number 9 to the Saints. I think a need for a defensive line is something that they really have, and it would be something really good for them. It's really tough. If Tyler Warren's off the board, I heard they really like Colston Loveland, the tight end of Michigan. Man, it's really tough because I look at 2 directions. I can go Colston Loveland, well, 3, maybe a guy like Kelvin Banks, where I know maybe the Bears don't have a glaring need at tackle, but Kelvin Banks has the chance to be the best tackle in the league. Oh, not the league, but out of this draft class for sure. I think you look at guys like Membu and Campbell; those are guys you can start now and who are good now. But if you look at someone who could potentially be the best overall, I think you can look at a guy like Kelvin Banks and he's really good. But then, man, I look at the team right under the Bears and it's San Francisco, and if we're not doing trades in this draft, I think I have to go Walter Nolan here. There's big needs on that defensive line for the Chicago Bears, at least interior-wise. He's someone who came in, transferred to Ole Miss this season, played super well. If Mason Graham's here, you might get worried about a run of inside defensive guys. I mentioned a guy like Derek Harmon who would go really high up. And then when you get into the later on second, third rounds of those drafts, you might not have something like that. I really like someone like Kelvin Banks to go here as well, too. But I just think like you said it yourself, you just best player available. You do have a solid O-line to where you could maybe try to trade or take someone in a later round. But I think you struggle to find a Walter Nolan type caliber guy, especially if Mason Graham's gone. Because you won't see a guy like Derek Harmon with your second round pick. You won't see some of these better interior guys because I think a lot of these guys will go higher than people expect. So I think you stick, you pick, and you just take Walter Nolan, who will just be a good game wrecker for you on that interior defensive line.
Okay, yeah. Hey, look, especially like first round, if you take a guy that's seen as like a reach, but it's a guy who fills a need and you're in love with, I feel like who cares? Like if he produces, I wouldn't care that you took him at 10 and people had him like 20th on their board. You still got him. So, yeah, like that one. Niners at 11, a team that's in transition, even though they were just not that long ago seen as one of the better situations in the league. Like, what are you doing here? Like they still haven't even solved the Brock Purdy thing, but they're obviously not going to go quarterback here. But they got to replenish some of the talent they lost. So where do they kind of get that started?
They also got some George Kittle problems, it looks like, as well, too. So that's not good. There's 2 people I really like, and it's 2 Texas guys, Jahdae Barron, Kelvin Banks. You have 2 glaring needs at tackle and then corner. Really, I think if you look at that offensive side of the ball with how much you've lost, again, you can find a couple of great corners in this draft class. I think you can get later on. Maybe Maxwell Hairston could be a guy that drops. Trey Amos is really good. I mean,
Mhm.
San Francisco, you guys need help, man. Trade up if you have to back into that first round. Trade up into the second round if you have to get another guy you need. I think I'm going to just take, if you're going to have to, Brock Purdy was that decision when it came to your extensions. You're going to need to protect him. I really like him here.
Okay. Yeah, for all the reasons you said. Like, you're thinking about paying Brock Purdy good money. Got to keep him upright. All right, the Cowboys at 12. I feel like every year the Cowboys draft is a must-see. So, I mean, look, they could go, like if Genty were here, you figure they probably run up there and take him. There's been so many questions about who's the wide receiver opposite CeeDee Lamb. You had who retired? Oh, why am I forgetting his name right now?
Well,
Ooh,
Michael
Martin?
Gallup, like a couple years ago, and then he came back, and I think he signed with Washington.
Oh, yeah. So, like, what do the Cowboys do here?
I think they're going to go receiver, but surprisingly enough, it's not going to be Ted McMillan. They really like Matthew Golden.
Yeah.
The team that drafts, like, loves drafting their Texas guys, keeping them in-house, keeping them. He's done tons of interviews with them. A blaring need is where, like, CeeDee Lamb is a great route runner. He's not like a burner down the field where he has, like, an immense amount of speed, like a Tyreek Hill. Matthew Golden's a quick guy. He's someone that adds a different aspect to that offense.
Mm-hmm.
Dak Prescott is a good deep ball thrower. So, getting a guy who can just be just a speedy guy, just off break could be really helpful for you. I think they go Matthew Golden here. And a lot of people go like a Marion Hampton and stuff like that. And maybe it's just because I think that's just like really high. Number 12 is really high, but I know this going to be, the draft where running backs get more value than ever as well, too. So you could see Hampton go 12 here, and it would not surprise me at all. But for the time being, just with that need at receiver, and just knowing that the Cowboys have been willing to interview him this high and comfortably take him at that pick, I think they'll stick and pick and go Matthew Golden here. That's like one of the number one sure things I've seen from this draft is like Jalen Walker to the Panthers and like probably Matthew Golden to the Cowboys if things kind of shape up the way it's going to be.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I can't dispute anything you said there. Dolphins are up at 13. I feel like this is another one of those picks where it seems like the direction is already out there. Like they're talking about moving on from Jalen Ramsey. You got corners on the board. Don't you just kind of go corner here at 13? What do you think they do?
Agree. I think they go Jahdae Barron, and now it'll be weird because we'll have a 3-player run on Texas players, which I'm not sure if that's happened before, especially in the first round. But I think they go Jahdae Barron here. Maybe you could have a case for Will Johnson, but it seems like throughout this whole draft process, like Barron's been that number one corner, and it's literally everyone else is kind of at a second tier, especially since Will Johnson, has some injury concerns as well too. Barron played like one of the best cornerbacks in college football this year. I think it's just a no-brainer pick. Maybe you could see them trying to like reach up and get like a guy like Josh Simmons, who I know people really, really like. He struggled with like injuries early on. I think he got injured in their first game against Oregon this year. And then like when he came back later on, he played really well. And even at his combines and stuff like that, people thought, for his size and stuff like that, given his injuries, he moved super well. So, man, I don't know. I don't want to talk myself into it because they need Barron as well. But I really do like a guy like Josh Simmons here, too, has been struggling, with his injuries. It's kind of something, Dolphins fans have been saying, kind of protect that O-line, protect Tua, as where you could get a cornerback later on. So I'm fine with Barron or, Simmons as it. Oh, you went Barron already, so that's cool. Barron.
Okay. All right, so doesn't Loveland to the Colts make too much sense here?
Yeah, no. It's whatever tight end is available if they don't have a tight end available. I think it's one of the safeties. Rather if it's Malachi Starks or Nick Amori. So it's one of those two. But if one of those two tight ends are available on the board, you go with them.
Yeah. So Loveland to the Colts. The Falcons. Look, I say it every year. Just get an edge guy. Get someone who can pressure the quarterback. Like, is this the year they finally do it?
Oh, yeah, I do. I agree as well, too. A lot of people like Mike Green and different guys like that. I really like Mykal Williams here. an in-house guy. Someone I know a lot of people are like shooting up draft boards.
Mhm.
People like Mike Green. He's kind of had a couple of good, bad off-field issues, and I kind of straying away for that maybe towards some of these later picks. Michael Williams, super good. Someone who's shooting up draft boards. I think even a guy like Shamar Stewart is someone that this team could take as well too. I just really like the upside of Michael Williams. He's someone who could also play kind of as a little bit of a linebacker role if you need him. Not the greatest, of course, but has shown he can do it at Georgia. These Georgia defensive guys are so good that it's really just hard. If you need an edge rusher, probably take the Georgia guy.
Yeah. Okay. Finally, the Falcons do it. Cardinals, we got. I mean, what's the need there? It says, edge, D tackle, so D lineman for the Cardinals. So is this where we get a run on maybe edge guys with the Falcons and now the Cardinals?
I don't think edge guys, but I do think they take a defensive lineman. But I think they'll go on the interior side. I think they'll go with a guy like Kenneth Grant, which granted they do need edge help. They got Josh Sweat in the offseason. That kind of fills up a little bit of that need that you had there. You also sign a guy like Calais Campbell, who I know is a little bit older, but he's a veteran guy that will help. You don't really have much when it comes to your interior defensive line help. Kenneth Grant, really good guy. He's probably kind of that only other really good interior guy until you get to Derek Carmen, which he will be drafted very high as well too, where you're like really solid on what he can produce as a player with the given need. I think you just go ahead and take him.
Okay. So now we got the Bengals, the Bengals still have glaring needs defensively. You still got Hendrickson, who is a member of the team, but has been told to find a trade. That was like 2 months ago. Nothing's come from that. So does they get their Trey Hendrickson replacement here at 17?
Man, it just who could be that guy for them?
Sure.
I look at some of these different guys when we get to later on edges. Are they worth that 17 pick? I really like a guy like Shamar Stewart here, but what about a guy like Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia?
That's also a glaring need for them. Yeah,
hard after losing Jesse Bates.
Yeah,
and it was very glaring as that as well too. I think you take a guy like Starks, who is really just a great player overall. It's just none of these teams, and this kind of top 20-ish outside of maybe Cincinnati and maybe Tampa Bay really need like that safety help. I think this would be a good spot for Malachi Starks to go. You get that defensive help you need, especially in the secondary, which struggled a lot this season. Until Trey Hendrickson's off or just gone from the team, I'm just going to say he's a part of the team, and maybe they'll figure it out. But until then, I really like Malachi Starks there.
Okay. Now it's your team.
Yeah.
Pacific Northwest, the Seahawks. I know we've talked about it on here. You've reacted to their offseason, not necessarily the most favorably, but you could right some wrongs here, getting a good pick. So who do you have your Seahawks taking?
And as much as I'd love taking off a guard here, like a guy like Gray Zabel, I think he's really good. That's not what Seattle does. And if I'm trying to predict what could potentially happen, I think they're going to go edge guys. And if I had to pick a guy that they're going to go, I think they're going to go Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M. He fits the mold of what Seattle drafts for their type of guys, a bigger, I think he's about 6'4", 270, bigger type of project guys that do great production-wise in college. And that's exactly what Shamar Stewart is. He'll be someone that you will be instantly be able to throw it on to that defensive line, someone who will pair well nicely with a guy like Leonard Williams. Boye Mafe is a little bit of a smaller edge as well, too, so if you need it in specific packages, as where, Shamar Stewart's this bigger type of guy that you can play on run defense, which is something Seattle needs tremendously, is run help. One of the worst rush defenses, it feels like, in most years is Seattle. So you get a guy like Shamar Stewart who can kind of just do it all. It kind of fits their draft scheme, what they do throughout decent years. I really like that, him there.
Okay. I feel like coming up on 2 hours, maybe we go lightning round with the rest of the first round here. Bucks at 19. The Baker Mayfield led Bucks. I know another one of your favorites around the league. So what did the Bucks do here at 19?
I think Jihad Campbell. If you look at
Okay.
Joe Shire and Turinka, Levante David's getting older. Jihad Campbell could really be your Levante David replacement. What both those guys do really good, they're both good at seeing the defense, calling it out, seeing what those types of packages are. You get that type of guy in Jihad Campbell, you lose a linebacker in free agency this year, you just replace him. And then even potentially for your long term for Levante David as well, I think you get a good guy like Jihad Campbell.
Yeah. I mean, look, Levante David's been around forever, and the guy produces it on the field. So I think it makes sense to get the guy in waiting once Levante David, who's definitely a leader down there, leaves. And look, getting an Alabama linebacker, that usually works out for teams. So, all right, the Broncos, big year last year. They lucked out. Well, I think to some they lucked out with Bo Nix. Bo Nix wasn't seen as capable of the season he had as a rookie. They are in a tough division in the AFC West. They look like they handled their own last year. So how do they build upon it with pick number 20?
I think they go Marion Hampton here. They've been vocal about getting a running back in this draft. I think if they don't take, even with Shedeur still being on the board, I don't think if the Broncos take Hampton here, I think the Steelers still might take Hampton at 21 over Shedeur. I think the Broncos have been very vocal about wanting a running back. Maybe is Hampton their running back? I'm not 100% too sure, but since he's the number 2 running back in this class, I know Travion Hendrickson has been getting a lot of hype recently about maybe potentially being that second back off the board. But with how things stand, people really like Amarion Hampton. We've even seen him go, as high to the Cowboys at 12.
Yeah.
The Broncos been very vocal about kind of getting a good running back in that room. I think that'll be Hampton.
Okay. So spoke about the Steelers a little earlier. Now you're at a point where Steelers are probably the next team since this kind of long run here. Quarterback is a glaring need for them. They only have Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson on the roster. I mean, I know Shedeur won't be at the draft, but if he's on the board and you got the Steelers here, like there's going to be so much talk about, you got to go take him. So do you have them taking Shedeur here?
I do. Okay. I think it makes the most sense. I mean, if you look at that quarterback room, it's Mason Rudolph and who?
Skylar Thompson.
Yeah. You're all well within your rights to go ahead and take Shedeur Sanders. You could play him for the first year, and regardless of what he does, I don't think people will really shed too much of an eye. But you're giving him a perfect situation. You're giving him a guy like George Pickens, who I know people say might be traded, but you just got DK Metcalf. I think trading George Pickens is maybe not a good idea. Give Shedeur Sanders, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, draft a running back later on.
Yep.
Metcalf, I think you can get a great season out of him. What people don't realize about Shedeur, maybe he can't play hero ball. That's what people think he needs. And that's why maybe he gets a little bit knocks on him. Is he not this hero ball type of guy that will go out and make these big, crazy throws, or anything like that, like a Patrick Mahomes-esque type of guy. But he does good things. He was the most accurate quarterback in college football this season. And you have great guys who can get open on their own rights. George Pickens, who can be someone, if the ball's placed in the proper spot, Pickens will figure out how to grab it. Same with DK. Yeah. And so you're giving him a great set of receivers to kind of show off his skills as well, too. I think it's just kind of a match made in heaven. Even if you get Aaron Rodgers, that's a good mentor for a year. Or even if Rodgers sucks, you sat behind him for a little bit, throw in Shedeur.
Yeah. No, I feel like the fit would just be too perfect there if Shedeur is there at 21. And look, not a bad organization to fall into with the Steelers. All right, now we got the Chargers on the clock at 22. And I feel like when you have Harbaugh there, like people be looking to see if there's a Michigan guy somewhere on the board for them to take. So who do you have Harbaugh taking with the Chargers 22?
Only Michigan guy who'd be worth taking at that point would be Will Johnson, and there's not a massive need at corner. I like Tyler McMillan here.
Yes.
You have a guy like Quentin Johnson who you got. There's still a need at receiver. He's that bigger type of guy that it would be a solid target for Justin Fields. I know this team is really looking like strong in on tight ends. None of the tight ends are available, which I don't probably think they will be. I imagine, Harbaugh's literally foaming out the mouth to get Colston Loveland, on the Chargers, or even a guy like Kenneth Grant, who I had go to the Cardinals. I think either of those guys would be perfect fits for the Chargers, especially given the Harbaugh tie-in. But none of them are available there on the board. Ted McMillan's a perfect piece to just throw in that offense for you. You give Justin Fields a good deep ball target type of guy, someone you can trust down the field. I think it's a perfect fit for him.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you mean Herbert because you were saying Fields, but
As a Fields goes.
yeah, I know. Yeah, the wide receiver. Like, I mean, Quentin Johnson was infuriating last year. Some of the easy balls he would drop. So yeah, Ted McMillan. I mean, they were even talking about like bringing back Keenan Allen at some point this offseason. So they're letting you know like they need the wide receiver help. All right, so you got Green Bay here on the clock, 23. In Green Bay, once again, another one of these NFC North teams, tough division, trying to find their way through. You got Love in that young wide receiver group. Because I do know wide receiver is a need. I don't think it's a glaring need, so probably not a spot they need to go to here. But what do you see Green Bay doing?
I like Will Johnson here.
Okay.
There's a need corner, especially given the Jai Alexander news and everything like that. Someone potentially being moved. There's going to be a big need at corner. Kind of keep a guy closer to the area. Wisconsin, Michigan, not too far off from each other. Will Johnson, if he didn't struggle how he did like with injuries and stuff this year, we could still talk about him being in that bearing range, probably cornerback number one. He was through the draft process. I mean, start of this season, I'd see him getting mocked super high to Jacksonville. He was even early on, and just throughout the draft process, he's kind of fell a little bit more. But I think this is a great pick. I think the Packers would be super happy to get a guy like Will Johnson in that room.
Yeah. That's kind of like the crazy thing with this draft process. A lot of these people got started with it like right after this season. And like you said, Will Johnson for a long time was seen as like a top 7 kind of guy. But now you've seen combine and pro days and all that. Yeah. But look, if Green Bay gets Will Johnson to 23, I think they'd be very happy with that pick. All right, so 24, the Vikings. Vikings, decent year last year. Top team. Playoffs, not so much. But what do the Vikings do to kind of build off of last year? And hopefully, I think a lot of people see them as taking a step back. But, yeah, like what do they do here? Do they go defense? Do they go offense and maybe fill in some offensive line help here? Like, what do you see the Vikings doing at 24?
It's really tough. I don't even really think Minnesota really struggles with their offensive line as much. I like the safety here, Nick Amamori. Just a combine beast this year. Someone who literally, if he gets an interception, he's probably going to go and house it. Tons of pick sixes, which is crazy even for a safety position.
Yeah.
He's someone who I could think could take it over Malachi Starks when we were looking at Cincinnati taking him at 17. It could be it's whoever they like. I think who they take at 17 there. I think he's just a beast that you can get on that defensive side. He'll be someone fun. I think Minnesota would like him. I think he kind of would fit that Minnesota culture well. He'll just be fun and energetic. Be a great side of that defensive side of the ball for him.
Okay. All right. Going along. All right, the Texans at 25. Texans are a team I was definitely disappointed in last year, but they kind of ended their season on a high note. Like their 2 best games were like their regular season, but the playoff games were kind of their 2 best performances. So something to build off of going into next year. I feel like it's another team that needs wide receiver, but I don't think they would go there here because of a lot of the top names are gone. But they do need a lot of O-line help because they moved out a couple of O-linemen in the offseason. So I guess which O-lineman do you see them taking? Is it Simmons at this point?
It's Simmons. Simmons is someone I really liked at 13 to Miami. He's someone I think could go even before Banks, man. I think he's someone who's really good and just struggled just having this year being his draft year and, not a lot of tape on him towards the end of the season just because he suffered an injury. I think Simmons is really good. A lot of people like him. Like I said, he's someone who could go way earlier. And if he was able to drop to the Texans at 25, they would be elated to get a guy like that. Someone who's played with CJ Stroud as well, too. It'd be perfect. I think they're going to either go one of the Ohio State guys. If it's Simmons or Ibuka, they're going to take one of those two.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. Oh, we got the Rams at 26. Rams, I feel like, are a team that's going into next season with a lot of expectations. And looking at their needs here, trying to see if this is in the area where there's an edge guy out there. Edge is a need for them. Tight end, running back, they can definitely wait on. Linebacker, I feel like there aren't really anybody in this area. So is this where they get an edge guy?
I do think so. I'm not sure if I'm going to go Mike Green on that route just because this is a good spot for him. I'm not sure if he necessarily totally fits at this point for him. But I do think, these next couple teams coming up, if you look at the board, like Baltimore needs edge help. Detroit needs a little bit more edge help. Washington needs more edge help. Buffalo, Philadelphia, all these teams need a lot of edge help.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the Rams in the position you are, you could maybe take the best player available, which could be Mike Green. But I like Donovan Ezaraku here, a Boston College guy who's been shooting up boards in the draft prospect. I think someone that Sean McVay likes a lot as well too. It doesn't seem like the Rams really like drafting people with huge character concerns either, which is someone just like Green has, just off-field stuff. I really like Ezaraku here.
Yeah, I mean, look, BC guy. I loved watching Ezaraku. So anybody who gets him here at the bottom the first round, I think will be lucky to have him. I kind of think like if you passed on him here, I feel like Baltimore would probably take him.
Agreed. I 100% agree.
All right, so Baltimore at 27.
I'm going to flip on the other side of what they need here. I'm going to go Tyler Booker, the inside O-lineman from from Alabama. Whoops. Guard is a big need for him, and you can have an argument between Greg Zabel and them, but for what Tyler Booker does, he's a very strong run-dominant guard, which is the game plan, for Baltimore. Yes. As much as Zabel can kind of do it a little bit more, that he had to play tackle last year just because of the injuries on their offensive line. But you do look at Zabel's size; he's a guard or a center. But Booker kind of fits just more of that mold of what they need, like a run type of guard. He's a bigger guy. I think that's a nice shoe-in spot. If they can't get one of the edges they necessarily wanted at first, I think Tyler Booker is a pick they're really happy with.
Okay. All right, so now we're getting to like the major players here. 28 got the Lions. Lions gonna be interesting. They lost a lot the offseason, whether it's coaches and players of the sort. So, hey, what's going on, Anthony? I feel like it's been a couple of weeks since I've seen you in here. Got 2 names for Washington. Okay, hold on to them because we're about to be there with Washington. I'd love to know if you line up with Dylan. So 28,
but
what do they do?
Take this pick. I don't know why my camera did that. I don't know why it does that, but I will change it once we make this pick.
Okay.
But I like Mike Green here for the Lions. An edge guy. He's someone who it will be a Dan Campbell guy through and through, someone with a high motor, high energy. He'll be someone that will play nicely next to Aiden Hutchinson. I think that the concept that Mike Green fell this far to them, it fits, just the Lions being able to get these guys who just drop to them or them trading up to get these guys people don't think are good. I mean, you look at Jack Campbell trading up for Jamar Gibbs. Both those guys have been excellent for them. I think they get a guy like Mike Green. He's going to fit right into that system and just be a perfect piece for them. I think they'll be elated to get a guy to drop that far for them.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because it does seem like if Dan Campbell's going to lean on anything, it's going to be defense. So, as Dylan comes back in here we go. All right, so we're at Washington. So, Anthony, the 2 names you have, put them in the comments right now. Because I guess when you look at them, looking at the needs once again, you got edge. There's a couple of guys here. Corner, I think there's a few in this area.
Maxwell Harrison, Trey Amos are type of guys that could go up. What I like for Washington, I really like, maybe getting a guy like a Emeka Egbuka. Maybe they don't need receiver as much anymore. I mean, they lost guys like a De'Ami Brown, things like that. And McLaurin's kind of that number 1 piece. So maybe just someone to give Daniels an extra option to would be cool. I really like Greg Zabel here too, a guard. It says tackle. He's a guard. Trey Amos, he's also someone that's kind of shot up in the draft prospects. You know, had an amazing year at Ole Miss this year. So yeah, no, but I'll let Anthony take the pick on who he wants.
Yeah, Anthony, who are you looking at for Washington? Let's see if any names align. Okay. So hold on. We're waiting. Yeah, so I guess while Anthony's doing that, let you guys know, make sure you hit the like button. Follow, subscribe, Wire to Wire Network. Appreciate you guys hanging on with us, going through this. Like I said, we always do at least one before the draft. And like I said, I will keep record of our first round. And the next week we'll see how close we were. Now, obviously, we didn't do trades, so that's going to mess it up a little bit. But still, you know, we'll still see if how many we got right, at least with teams in the player fit. And also, make sure you guys are here Thursday. Silent to Sideline will be back Thursday for the draft watch party for the first round. So make sure you guys tune in. That way you'll get our reactions live as the picks come in. And like I said, I will be ready to go at 4 for New England. It will be reacting live on Wire to Wire to the pick. So make sure you guys do come back Thursday for the draft watch party here on the network. Anthony's leaving us in suspense right here.
No.
Okay, so Anthony, according to our mock, Azaraku we had going 26 to the Rams, so a couple of picks before. I think Azaraku, if he was here for Washington, that would be a good pick for them as well. And then Nick
Scourton's
and worry, the safety, we had him going to the Vikings at 24. So you're not off on the two guys being kind of in this area, but we have those two off the board. So are we leaning Ibuka here?
I really like Greg Zabel here. I just don't want to see him go out of the first round. I think he'll be a first round guy. It's just where at. I think he could go ahead of Tyler Booker, no problem. It was just more of a scheme fit. I think he could go to Seattle at 18 if we want to decide. I think he could go 16 to Arizona if they really wanted to.
All right, so we'll take Zabel.
Go.
All right, so now we got Buffalo at number 30. And I know it says they have a need in that corner. They did re-sign Tre'Davious White after his 1 year in Baltimore. They brought him back. You know, you got D tackle here, edge, and they also have a wide receiver need. Anthony also said, don't be surprised if Washington drafts a running back.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think Travion Henderson is a perfect spot.
Henderson right there. Yeah. So who do we have for Buffalo? I think this is an area where I think this is a pick because Buffalo has shown that they're willing to trade before. This could be a trade out spot for somebody at the top of the second round and maybe get one of these wide receivers if Buffalo doesn't love any of them right here.
Or someone's trading back in to get a QB.
Yeah, true.
But if we're sticking and picking, there's a glaring need at edge. Von Miller was definitely not what you thought he was going to be for Buffalo. I look at a guy like James Pierce Jr., and he kind of gives you some Von Miller vibes, you know, kind of the things you like from Von Miller, James Pierce can kind of do. I really like James Pierce being in the first round. He was really high earlier in the draft process, but he's kind of shot down boards a little bit. But he's such a good talent. I think, you know, you get that glaring you need at edge, and you get someone, you know, with familiar skill sets of things that you've liked and you wanted for a guy like Von Miller. You get an actual James Pierce Jr. and a lot younger and cheaper.
Okay. Hey, look, Von Miller's not going to last forever. So, yeah, get the young guy in there. All right, now we got our Super Bowl participants. First off, with the Chiefs, sitting here at 31, and the needs that they have: D tackle, edge, so basically D line, guard, tackle, safety. What need do they knock out here at 31?
It's going to be on their offensive line. If the Super Bowl showed us anything, and I'll give all credits to that Philadelphia defense.
Yes.
It was killer. Kansas City needs offensive line help. Josh Connerly, Jr., the tackle out of Oregon, is a guy that I've really seen like that's super high mock pick. A consistent thing I see in most mocks. I think it just makes perfect sense for both sides to team up. There's a massive need at offensive line. Connerly's a big guy to help out, a great pass blocker, someone Patrick Mahomes will like. It'll be a very good piece for them.
All right. Yeah, I think because like you said, they had I'm blanking on his name too. The guy that they kicked outside to play tackle. Tooney. They had Joe Tooney playing tackle. Why not just go out and get a tackle in this at this pick? And Connerly, yeah, I think it makes too much sense if they're sitting there at 31. He's there. Why not? So now we end it with the Eagles at 32, Super Bowl champions. If there's anything we learned about them, they love going trenches as well. They have some guys to replace. I mean, Patriots took Milton Williams from them. Do they find the Milton Williams replacement here?
And they do. The guy I've been hyping up this whole draft, Derek Harmon.
Yep.
Philadelphia will be ecstatic to get a guy like that on there, a guy who could be top 20, top 15 on some boards. Them getting them at the last pick in the first round will be literally a Milton Williams replacement. They're just reloading up on the trenches, which is what Philadelphia has to do. They do so good at drafting at that area that, by the time those rookie deals are up, they can't really necessarily afford to pay the guys, so they just have to, plug and place again until, those guys progress again. He's a great piece. I think he's going to fill into this Philadelphia defense nicely, like butter. A great pick for Philadelphia. I think they'll be ecstatic. I think that would be like a very big steal of the draft if he was able to go to 32 there.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's our full first round. Once again, next Tuesday, I'll make sure to save this, pull it up. We'll match it up against what really happened in the first round. We'll see how many we get correct. Even if it's not necessarily the same spot, but the team and the player match, or even if the player matches with the positioning and the team trades up to get them, we'll count that as well. So, yeah, draft is only a few hours away at this point. Cannot wait. Like I said, make sure you guys are back here Thursday, Silent Sideline, draft watch party for the first round. Have a lot of fun. So you can react to your teams the same time that we do. We would love to see all of you back. But, Dylan, you got anything you want to add before we get out of here?
No, I hope people enjoyed the mock draft and just enjoyed today's episode. Like you mentioned earlier, go ahead and subscribe, share it as much as you can to everyone. And I'm excited for the draft. I thought this was a very, very solid draft that we did. Again, and that saying that this draft could be literally, we could go, outside of the first 3 picks, we could get everything else wrong. This is probably one of the unpredictable drafts that we've had in recent years where it's not really sure what could happen because, like we said, things kick off with the Patriots at 4 because if they go Genty, then the board's wide open at that point as well, too. So it could change from, Jacksonville at 5, or it could, be a pretty chalky draft, which, has happened before as well. So no, I'm just excited. I can't wait to see how this goes. Can't wait to watch, the live show, see how it goes as well with everyone, see how all of our teams do. I'm excited. This is my favorite time of the year, and we're only, like you said, just Thursday. So you're just getting closer and closer.
Exactly. Like Dylan said, make sure you guys hit the like button if you haven't already. If you are new, make sure follow, subscribe. Greatly appreciate it. And look, we'd love to see, like I said, Anthony, it's been a while. Hopefully you are back next week. And I'm back on here, like I said, Thursday for the draft watch party and then Friday. So we'd love to see all of you back for those 2 days. And next Tuesday we'll be back. Brett should be back as well. So we'll definitely get Brett's thoughts on the draft, especially for his Packers and the playoffs with his Bucks, who did lose tonight to the Pacers, are now down 2-0. So, yeah, it'll probably be interesting talking to Brett next week. And obviously, Dylan will be back. So we'll talk draft. We'll talk playoffs again next week. So appreciate all of you. And we will see you all next week, Tuesday. All right. Bye.